After a huge build-up, Sonic 3 has finally released. It has been a truly interesting ride from the initial teaser, the long wait for the first trailer, the not as long wait for the second trailer, and when I finally got to see the film. So before I dive into my actual thoughts on the film, I want to discuss my experience. If you just want to hear my thoughts, skip to this time on screen. If not, sit back, relax, and enjoy. In April of 2022, Shadow was teased in the post-credit scene in Sonic 2. From that moment, the hype began. When the first trailer dropped, I was the first person to ever dress as Robotnik's new tattered look in Sonic 3. Other than the inaccurate belts and the pretty bad homemade mustache, I'd say it was pretty accurate. I watched the two trailers multiple times in excitement for this film. Once the day came to finally see it, I had perfected my outfit, and even got the popcorn bucket before it sold out. All leading to the moment I was disappointed. Unfortunately, this is a kids' film, and of course, that means many bad parents bring their non-theater age kids to scream and ruin everyone's time during the movie. This led to me missing key moments of the film and ultimately kind of feeling let down by it. I didn't actually get to see the film. I went home extremely disappointed that night. Out of all the films I was disappointed by, why did it have to be Sonic 3? Why did that have to be one of them? That would then soon change the following day. So, I had planned to see it opening night, just regular, then see it in 4DX the following day. I actually got to see the film this time. I could actually watch it without a bunch of people walking back and forth with food or kids screaming. I got to actually finally see it, and I absolutely loved it. Sure, there was one guy screaming throughout the film whenever anything of note happened, and at the end of the film, he stood up and said, 20 out of 10 film, better than 6. I kid you not. So now that you know the bulk of my experience, it's time to talk about the actual film. There's gonna be 3 parts: non-spoiler, spoiler, and just overall thoughts which won't contain spoilers. This film is actually really good. My main complaint is the runtime and the pacing of the film. Sometimes it feels like things just happen too quickly or are glossed over or unexplained. I think Sonic 2 did a better job when it comes to explaining things and going more in depth. I wouldn't really say this is much of a spoiler, but it kind of is. It's never actually explained how Gerald lived this long, nor did it explain how Robotnik survived in Sonic 2. It also doesn't go too in-depth within Sonic's world. Unlike Sonic 2, where it's connecting the present to the past, Sonic 3 doesn't really delve into Longclaw or Sonic's backstory or his home planet really at all. It's more so about Shadow, which to some is a good thing, but to people like me, I would've kinda liked it if there was a bit more of a tie back to how the films originally started. However, I absolutely love how Shadow's character and backstory were handled. As shown in the trailers, they compare and contrast Sonic and Shadow's backstory, showing that they aren't too different. Despite how it may sound, it does go differently than with Knuckles in Sonic 2. Since Gerald is alive in this film, you really get to see how crazy he actually is compared to how he is in the game. This leads to a pretty interesting dynamic between Ivo, Gerald, and Shadow. This film is definitely the most emotional of the 3. Not just Shadow's story, but also Ivo discovering what family truly means, Sonic learning to make the right choice even if it's hard, and Team Sonic learning what it truly means to be a team. It's hard to discuss these topics spoiler-free. The trailers do give you a hint to what I mean, but you'll know if you saw the film. I also loved the character dynamics of Team Sonic. Something that's been poorly handled in the games, especially during the meta era, was why Team Sonic was even a thing. Like, sure, Tails would always be around Sonic, but they didn't really act too much like friends, or really collaborate, or have any roles to play with each other. Tails or Knuckles, they were just kinda there. In Sonic 3, their friendships are very well established, each have a different role to play, and are shown how they work best together, and especially what happens if they don't work together. You can also tell each character has really grown since Sonic 2, but they're not perfect either. Each character's motives make sense and nothing actually feels forced. You can tell the crew behind this film have a great appreciation for the source material. I will say that the human characters, excluding the Robotniks, do have the least amount of screen time out of all 3 films. This is good in the sense that we won't have something like the wedding scene, but it's also a bad thing that we don't really see those characters get developed. The focus was clearly put more onto the, main Sonic characters, but the film makes up for it by these characters being at their best. Sonic feels much more mature now, being the actual leader of the team. Tails has embraced his role as the gadget guy and doesn't really feel like a sidekick to Sonic like he did in Sonic 2. Knuckles, while still being stern and ready for action, has learned to trust Sonic and fulfill his role as the guardian of the Master Emerald. Shadow's character feels fully justified, and you can really understand where his unhappiness and rage come from. Ivo Robotnik is still for the most part evil and uses his intellect to track down his machines and create useful gadgets for him and Gerald to use. And Gerald is just as vengeful and unhinged as he was in Sonic Adventure 2, however, I'd say he's a bit more so this time. I will say, I do prefer Robotnik's portrayal in Sonic 2, mainly because he's more of the main villain in that film, and you get to see him at his evilest. However, I understand they couldn't really do that since he partnered with Gerald, and Gerald was set up to be the main villain. Time for the spoilers section. If you don't want to be spoiled, skip to this time on screen. I'll give you 5 seconds. Alright, now the real review starts. This film pushed so many limits in terms of translation from the games to the films. Now, the human characters were kind of pushed to the side, especially after the backlash from Sonic 2, so Tom and Maddie didn't really do much until the latter half of the film. I think the writers may have forgotten that Tom is supposed to be a cop, and even if there's nothing world-destroying going on, they still kinda have to be on duty. Shadow's story was changed a bit. Instead of Gerald creating Shadow with DNA from Black Doom, Shadow was found in a meteor that crashed into Earth. Now this does mean he could be from the planet that Sonic came from, but it's never really elaborated on. Maria also never had any illness. Gerald just wanted her around. It's explained that he just takes her everywhere. Now this change can be seen as a bit controversial, but I think it shows a bit more that Maria meant a lot to Gerald, if he was willing to, just kind of bring her everywhere. Maria then becomes friends with Shadow, and unlike everyone who sees him as an alien threat, she sees him as a friend. Now to answer the question everybody is asking. Does Maria get shot and killed in this movie? Yes. From a certain point of view. In other words, the soldier tries to shoot Maria. A young Commander Walters, or as I call him, Old Olive Garden guy, moves the gun away from Maria. However, the bullet does hit a container that then explodes, killing Maria in the process. So yes, she was shot at and killed, but wasn't directly shot and killed. Listen, they're doing their best for a PG movie. I commend them for even showing it more than just like maybe a quick flashback or something. Gerald Robotnik also wasn't frozen like I thought in my predictions video. He just somehow lived to 110 unexplained. My guess is that Shadow's quill has something to do with it. Maybe licking that quill gave him the chaos energy to keep on living despite his age. Alright, editor's note here. While I was making this video, the director Jeff Fowler has just revealed that, yes, that is how he survived. And they did film something to show it, but they just cut it from the film. I honestly would have preferred if they kept it in, considering, he's one of the main characters of the film. Anyway, back to the video. It was explained how he was freed, though. His freedom was in exchange for blueprints to the Eclipse canon, as seen in Trailer 2. However, there is no Space Colony arc. There's only the Eclipse canon. So that's why it looked the way it did in the trailers, because there's no arc part of it. That part was on Earth. The only part that is in space is the Eclipse canon. Ivo Robotnik had kind of a redemption arc in this film. Now, it is not explained how he survived, but it is shown that he's clearly in a rut. Agent Stone then informs him that his machines have been stolen. Robotnik tracks down the source, leading him to find Gerald Robotnik, who stole them to lure Ivo there. It wasn't fully explained how he got the machines, let alone took control of them, but Ivo was able to take back control of them. Ivo then quickly becomes quite fond of Gerald, as he finally has a family member, leaving poor Stone in the dust. The montage of family bonding moments actually does happen, so my prediction was correct. Another prediction that was correct was Gerald Robotnik dying to Ivo's hands after an interesting fight scene. This is when Ivo really discovers the true meaning of family. He started by believing that blood relativity is what made family, but he now realizes family is the people that you love, and as predicted, Robotnik completes his arc with Stone. His final moments are spent thanking Stone for being the only person who ever cared about him, referring to him as not only a sycophant, but a SEGA friend. I really felt bad for Stone this entire movie. Robotnik had kinda treated him more like he did in the first Sonic film. Now, this is likely due to Gerald taking the spot of Robotnik's right-hand man, but Stone finally got the recognition he deserved. Robotnik then sacrificed himself to save the Earth, blowing up with the Eclipse Cannon. I had predicted they would do something like that, but more happens in the after-credit scene. Gerald was also very good at the emotional manipulation he used on the characters. He would constantly remind Shadow of all the pain he went through rather than the person he lost. He would also remind Ivo of how the world rejected him and all of his efforts. I also appreciated Knuckles' characterization in the film. He still considers himself the guardian of the Master Emerald and is always ready for a fight, but he's deeper than that. He even stands up for Tails against Sonic and ultimately keeps his promise of trust despite his situation. But he never breaks his code. After his characterization in the Meta era and in Boom, I really like how his character is portrayed in this film, as this feels like the best way Knuckles has been handled in a really long time. I also do very much appreciate the Sonic R reference. Yeah, that's right. We're living in a world where Sonic R is referenced in the films and it's not anything relating to Tails doll. When Maria and Shadow are looking at the stars, Maria says that they're like diamonds, referencing the song Diamond in the Sky in Sonic R. That's not something a lot of people are really gonna pick up, but as an avid Sonic R fan, I feel seen. Now for the post-credit scenes. Oh boy! It's set up by the race in the last scene of the film, which starts with Sonic overshooting the finish line and ending up somewhere far away. And then, Metal Sonic appears. He looks just like his in-game counterpart. Now, there are a few minor changes, such as this Metal Sonic can change his hand into a gun and shoot out of it, and he also has a few lines across his head. But he looks just straight out of the games. Like, we have not seen any character this faithful to their game design. Not even Sonic's design is as close to his in-game design as Metal Sonic's is. They really stuck to the source material on that one. Although, in an attempt to shoot Sonic, he ends up not hitting him. Sonic then punches Metal Sonic, in which he regroups and turns his gun back into a hand. Sonic then becomes surrounded by multiple Metal Sonics. But then, somebody's hammer shows up and destroys all of the Metal Sonics. A hooded figure then catches the hammer and then is revealed to be Amy. That's right, both predictions for the post-credit scenes were correct, although we currently don't know how Metal Sonic was made. Because my original theory was that Robotnik was going to use one of Sonic's quills to create him, but I'll touch back up on that. Amy's characterization does make me a bit concerned for Sonic 4, however. This reminded me of Peach from the Mario movie, and please no. Biggest gripe with the Mario movie is it essentially did kind of the Lego movie plot, where Peach is this strong, determined protagonist, and Mario has to be the clumsy, funny guy who's into her, and Luigi's the one who needs to be saved. I swear, they better not pull that for Sonic 4, where Amy's the strong, determined character who is focused on destroying all the Metal Sonics, where Sonic is just the clumsy goofball she has to drag around. They better not. They better not. But let's be hopeful that they don't make this mistake, considering how the last films have gone. Tying back to how the Metal Sonics were made, maybe Stone made them to carry on the Robotnik legacy. Maybe they were created by Ivo to hunt down Sonic in the event of his death. I'm really excited to see where they go from here, and I'm pretty sure the creator of these Metal Sonics will be the main antagonist of the next film. And with Robotnik presumably dead, I wonder who it's gonna be. Then there's the second post-credit scene. Just as predicted, Shadow actually survives, meaning that it is possible that Robotnik survived as well, but I'm not 100% certain. Shadow may have only survived because he removed his inhibitor rings and overall is just much more powerful than a human being like Robotnik. Or Shadow could have just teleported Robotnik out of the Space Colony Arc at the last second, much like he teleported Robotnik earlier in the film into the Eclipse Cannon. Now it is speculated that there's going to be a Shadow spin-off show, and this after-credit scene could be the setup for this show. Hopefully it's a bit more about Shadow and where he comes from than the Knuckles show was for Knuckles. I unironically like the Knuckles show. I kinda knew from the plot synopsis it would be mostly about Wade, but that's my opinion. It is now time for my overall thoughts on this film. It's fantastic. My only complaint is the pacing of the film could use a bit of work. I noticed a lot of scenes from the trailers or TV spots were changed, deleted, altered, which makes me suggest there was a bit of rushing involved. Listen, if you had to delay the film for like a week because of the actors, the writer's strike, I would not have protested too much, as long as the film was good. The characters were handled incredibly well, all of their motives made sense, where I would have preferred if things were a bit more explained, but that's really my only complaint. This film just does everything else so right. Overall, I give this film an 18 out of 20. The film's incredible. Now, I'm not sure whether or not I like it more than Sonic 2. I do like the plot of Robotnik being the big bad guy, much like the games, so it does have an edge in that department, but once Sonic 3 releases for home video, I'll probably get my feel of which one I like better. Especially since Sonic 2 has been tied as my favorite film since its released. So, if you haven't seen Sonic 3 yet, I highly recommend you go out and watch it as soon as you can. Trust me, you won't regret it, as long as your theater is decently empty. So, those are my thoughts on Sonic 3. Thanks for watching.